All right. To be honest, today on the DFL Before DNF podcast, if I wasn't recording it, this conversation would probably go almost exactly the same way as it's about to go, which is quite unpredictable. Because today I've got some good buddies joining me, class of 2001 CHS from Lubbock, Texas. We are the Mustangs. I first met these dudes, I don't even know for sure. Probably 95, 96. I think at one point they probably picked on me. And then
No.
Did that backwards.
Yeah.
And then maybe I returned the favor, and then we became best friends. And there's a whole the three people on this podcast today represent maybe another dozen really awesome people that all belong on this podcast as well. But today I'm the lucky one that gets to host my friend Ryan Mansell. And why is Ryan on the podcast today? Well, he's running 100 miles with me at Zion in about a month and a half. And then next to Ryan here is my old buddy Cody, who's not actually an ultra runner, but within the context of our friendship, I think this absolutely is going to make a lot of sense as this conversation goes on. But Ryan and I, we all graduated in 2001, Lubbock, Texas, and we all went our separate ways. And in recent months, we've started to reconnect on this topic of ultra running. Cody, being a non-ultra runner, has been, as he's always been since, the 90s, has been, just one of the biggest fans and biggest cheerleaders, like pushing me on and encouraging me. And so he's perhaps listened to this podcast as consistently as any ultra runner. And when we started to explore, my next race, him hoping, always saying, he'd love to be there if he could. These races are so remote. They're so hard to get to. Well, enter Ryan into the picture, and we bring on this big group text, and Ryan is like, oh yeah, I've been into Ironman or, Ironman distance or, half Ironmans. I'm just endurance athlete, got all this past, got all this history, hey, why don't we try and do this 100 miler together? And so Ryan signs up for the 100 miler. And since we haven't really talked more or less in 20 years, come to find out that what Ryan brings to the table is really, I think, a lot of what the missing link is for those who've been following along on my journey. And that missing link is my mind, I think, is garbage. And I've talked with a lot of really wise people, I think, at this point. And I think one of the number of things, one of my biggest issues has been nutrition. So I'm not even giving myself a fighting chance to finish these things when I don't have my nutrition dialed. So as a base level, I'm working on nutrition so that my brain can actually think and use all this new wisdom that's coming to the table. So today, as Cody and I kind of both tag team interviewing Ryan, Ryan is a former Army Special Forces guy, soldier.
Guy who works.
And he's also an attorney by trade, not practicing currently. He's a new dad, Papa to Leo. I've got a Leo, and he's got a Leo, and so that's cool.
It's very cool.
He's got a lot, and I'm excited to catch up. And so on some levels, you're just going to hear some old friends catching up. But I think the real wisdom here of what's been going on in the podcast is as Ryan texts me, he's on these long runs, and he's like, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, I listened to Jesse talk about, just going to hitting the next mile marker, taking one more step. And Ryan's like, hey, there's another layer on top of that I think would be interesting. Have you heard about stacking wins? And I said, I have not heard about stacking wins. So it's just an obvious next step to bring Ryan on. And so first, before any further ado, I want to welcome Cody and Ryan. Thanks for joining me, guys.
Thanks for having me, man. Super happy.
Should we sing the theme song?
It's too damn cold to run.
No, I meant the Coronado High School. What, I don't know, the Pride song. Okay, hey Ryan, what have you been up to the last 20 years? So we graduated, you went off to Texas A&M, and then what?
Yeah, graduated from A&M. Didn't really know what to do with myself, so to speak.
Yeah. And it's important to note that Ryan is on an exercise bike.
Yeah, sorry.
I love this.
Sorry, Anyway,
you got to get it in at some point.
we'll get to that in a second, probably as to why I'm feeling stressed to do this right now. But anyway, yeah. So first of all, it's also kind of cool. Like I don't know if I ever told you this, Josh, but like I went to A&M. I had an academic scholarship to A&M, and
Uh-huh.
my actual like essay for that was about our friendship. I
Dope.
don't know if I ever told you that,
No.
because like I don't know, maybe Cody as the team historian slash team mom will correct us on this, but I remember in
Fair.
like eighth or ninth grade, uh, I think you and Justin Hefner were in
Uh-huh.
some sort of little beef over Michelle Owens. Uh,
Oh God.
yeah, and so I remember you guys like didn't like eighth or ninth grade, and then so I was friends with Justin, right? So
Yeah.
by the communicative property of friendship, it's like I didn't like you, right? And then
Fair enough.
eventually, obviously, your kids, it probably only went on for like a week, and then
Yeah.
it's like that seemed like a lifetime, right? And then,
Right.
but anyway, so yeah, so I think one of the prompts for that essay was something like, describe like a situation that kind of like changed like who you are as a person or whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
Because like at that point in time, all I really kind of knew was like the typical kind of West Texas thing of like,
Yeah.
you play sports, whatever, right? And you brought like a completely different kind of like person to the mix. Like you would move from Dallas or
Hmm.
whatever, and you were really into
Yep.
music and all this stuff, and it was just a completely different world and a completely different like mindset point of view that I had never
Hmm.
experienced, and
Hmm.
that was really transformative for me. Anyway,
Really?
so
Thanks for
yeah,
sharing that.
so
Yeah, and I'm going to cut you off. So that just for the audience, just a quick context. Ryan and I grew up on the same street together in Lubbock. We played football together since we could play flag to put pads on all the way through senior year. Our
Was
families
it
traveled together.
94th Street?
90th,
90th Street, if you want to get it
90th.
really correct.
I
yeah,
Yeah.
do. I do. It's important. Context is
um,
good for our Lubbock
yeah,
audience.
yeah,
right. But
right,
the context you need to know is that like Ryan and I would each like, and I'm just using like perspective, but Ryan and I would each get our Tommy Hilfiger shirt one a year. I was wearing my Jabot jeans. We were playing football. We were just like normal Bible Belt West Texas kids.
sure,
And Josh comes in the scene and he joins another group of people that are wearing Ramones and MXPX shirts. We know they
sure,
skateboard.
Maybe some
Rumors are
Massimo and
they're the
Stussy.
reason there's tagging in our nice little white middle suburban neighborhood on all the streets, and it's like pretty cool tags. And so we know that of these kids that they're like cool guys, but they're also just like alternative, right?
yeah,
And then you find out, and I think the cool part of this story is like we all have so much in common. Like Josh and I both play guitar. We find out we both, we love. We Josh finds Jesus and he's like, oh well, these guys love Jesus, and it's like then we start getting connected and we almost enter each other's universes. And you've
Yeah.
got the band stuff and all of that, and like all of a sudden we're in a mixture of bands together, and your friends
Yep.
all become my best friends to this day, right? And it's just kind of this interweaving of two worlds, and we realize we have so much in common, but we kind of blend it. And Ryan was right in the
Yeah.
fold of all that as he
Yeah.
starts to share that. So sorry to cut you off, Ryan.
Yeah.
no, you
Ryan
didn't
was kind
miss
of the
perfect.
gentle giant. He was the tallest and the nicest. Like he was just like sweet guy.
Yeah, I was like 6'3" at 14, and I haven't grown an inch since, like, um, anyway, yeah, so where were we? Yeah, okay, anyway. So that's kind of how it all began. And then also, like, I fell in love with music because of Josh, and particularly punk rock really spoke to me.
Yeah.
Of course, and I'm not artistically inclined in like any way. Like, I can write, like, but not creatively. So it's
Yeah.
it's like anyway. So going back to school, go through college, really kind of. I mean, my grades were terrible. I was on scholastic probation
Really?
multiple times. Like I nearly lost my scholarship a few times. That kind of goes back to what we were talking about, like growing up playing sports and everything. It's really my only identity that I had was being an athlete. And when we got to high school, like I had a lot of mental health issues that were never diagnosed. And that's just the era we grew up in and the place we grew up in, right? And anyway, so we get to high school, and I really burned out on sports. Like I just really burnt out on sports, and
because you were like
because it's like
basketball, and,
yeah,
and
you're
top
playing like
competitive
two
football.
sports a season, like 4 seasons a year. You know what I mean? It's like it just never stops, and so I burnt out. So anyway, so in college I was like, I kind of went the exact opposite. I was like, I'm not doing anything. Like I'm tired of this. And so whenever I got out of school, I didn't have a lot of options because my grades were so bad, and I had an English degree, which that's something like, it's funny because you were talking about this with one of your other guests about like the circular kind of thing that happens with
you become a teacher, or you learn something, become an expert in it, so that you can teach it, so that you can teach it to people who will eventually become teachers of it.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with the acquisition of knowledge for the sake of knowledge, or literature for the sake of literature. But because my grades were so bad, graduate school immediately wasn't an option. And I didn't have any real way to kind of like any of the jobs I was going to get weren't going to be great. You know, with like an English degree that like with terrible grades. So I was working a few jobs, things weren't great. There was just a lot of stuff going on that kind of sucked. And so I was like, man, I'm just going to join the Army. Like, it was like 2005. Or sorry, early 2006. And I'm just like, I'm going to join the Army. I was like, I don't know anything else to do. Like, whatever.
And did you join as an officer? I don't know a whole lot, but you had a college degree, so did that mean something?
Not really. Like I could have tried to do the officer thing. But I just really wanted to be like part of a team. I didn't want to be a manager. I just wanted to be one of the guys, kind of, again.
Really?
You know what I mean? So I think I was 22 at the time, and we went out to dinner and in Lubbock at one of the, I can't remember which restaurant it was, but we got to dinner there, and my sister's husband at the time, his brother had just gotten out of the military, and I was like, hey man, like what's up? I want to join the Army. Like I need guidance. I don't know what to do here, but I want to join. I don't know. And he's like, hey man. So I was like, I think I just want to be like infantry. I just want to go like lay it all out there, see what I have in me, kind of thing.
Wow.
Right. And he's like, no, he's like, you can do that, but he's like, so there's this program. You should go talk to the recruiter about it. You can like join the Army, you go do a few things, and then you get a guaranteed spot at Special Forces selection. So, because usually the path is like you join the Army, you do some stuff, you put in like an application, like packet, it gets approved or whatever, you get a selection date, you go TDY from your unit, you go do selection. If you get selected, you go back to your unit, they kind of out-process you, and then you go back and you start the Special Forces qualification course in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Anyway, so I go out, talk to the recruiter. Recruiter's like, you can do this. Like, you qualify for this, whatever. So so that's kind of how I ended up joining the Army. And
so that was 2005. When did you go to Special Forces? Like when did you start doing the stuff?
Yeah, so I shipped out, like as they will say, and it's kind of weird. Like I haven't been in the Army since 2014, right? So
okay,
I don't really know. It's almost been 10 years since I've been out, which is kind of weird to think about.
That's wild.
But so September of 2006, I went to Fort Benning, did 16 weeks of like what's called like infantry one station unit training, which is basically like your basic training and then AIT school combined. And then after that, you go to airborne school for 3 weeks. And then after that, you go up to, or down, I don't know if it's up or down, to Fort Bragg. Yeah. Well, it's not Fort Bragg anymore, but you go to Fayetteville, what was Fort Bragg. And then you go into like the Special Forces pipeline. Like you start preparing to go to selection. Okay. And so
hold on, let me get this right. So you are, what is the timeline from you saying, hey, I want to go do this thing, before you're around Special Force applicants who have been already in the military for a period of time and have their footing underneath them, and you're walking in the room with arguably some of the more elite
Yeah,
men and women of our country. Is that fair?
Yeah.
for sure. And very quickly, actually, because so you do like the 16 weeks of like infantry basic training, and then you go 3 weeks of airborne, and then you're at Fort Bragg, where you are, your cadre instructors are Green Berets. They're special forces guys, long tab, who are like instructing you. And then there's like a little prep course you do for like 3 weeks or so. And then if you meet the requirements for that, then they send you off to selection. You go do your PT test for selection. If you pass your PT test for selection, then you start the 3-week selection process. And so pretty quickly, you obviously in that little prep phase, you're around your instructors who are all special forces guys who are on assignment at Bragg, like doing this cadre stuff, doing their SWIC tour, which is Special Warfare Center in School. It's called like the SWIC tour. Anyway, and then, yeah, you go to selection and you're around officers, senior enlisted guys. You're around other like privates. Yeah. And then you go through
Okay,
selection.
let me ask another question.
That's where it starts.
So let's bring kind of some athleticism into this. So you are, you're an athletic dude in high school. You're an elite athlete, if you will, of that age. You're age 18. You kind of drop off, take it, you cool it for college.
Sure.
You get into this mindset. I assume you're like hitting some jogs. You're trying to like not just walk in cold, so you're just totally like, because you've been off for a few years, right, of working out. And so when you walk in, and what level of shape are you?
Terrible.
And where's your mind? Is your mind in the worst place it's been, or did you feel like you were going in mentally strong?
No, terrible. Everything was literally just like I had gotten into a motorcycle wreck in the spring, so a few months earlier. So I had like I have like a skin graft on my left foot. So I had that was actually like I was on crutches the first time I went into a recruiter station.
Wow.
And he's like, I was like, he's like, this is the first slot we have. Can you do that? I was like, sure, whatever. He's like, you're on crutches. I'm like, I don't care. And so that was like probably into summer time frame. So I had a few months. And then, yeah, but it was like, man, when you talk about mindset, where I was at when I joined the Army, I was like, I just felt, and Josh will relate to this, and actually I want to circle back to this a little bit later whenever I actually talk about some of the things that I think would really help you, Josh.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I learned that being physically fit, physical activity was not only like central to my physical health, but my mental health. Like I found that it was something that like I need that just like I need oxygen or food or water. Like it's just something I have to have.
Yeah.
And so having spent those like 4 or 5 years in undergrad, like not doing any of that stuff. And at this point in time, whenever I joined the Army, I was probably close to 240 pounds. And like, I'm about 200 right now. And like,
Okay.
I'll race if I'm like seriously, like trying to prep for races and stuff. Like last season I raced triathlon. I was racing around 175. Yeah. So I was like really out of shape, but in my mind, I was like, I have to have this thing. I need something. Like I'm not just a person that can just kind of float out there in a day job or whatever. Like I have to have something else. And, and I knew I wanted to prove to myself, like I wanted to prove to myself that I wasn't like, hadn't devolved into this, like, for lack of a better term, just like this lazy shitbag, like that was kind of worthless, just kind of floating along doing nothing. Like I was like, so I had everything to prove. Like I felt like I had just let, like I had so much wasted potential. And not for anybody else, but for me. I just felt like I was wasting everything.
Okay.
Anyway,
I mean, there's an aha moment right here for me. in thinking about like the ultra runner mindset, because you say wasted potential. I mean, I often talk with my kids about like, I still feel like whether it be in business or in physical effort that I've only, I'll say like, I feel like I've only given like 50% of myself. Like I'm itching to be in a situation where I need to give 100% of myself.
Mm-hmm.
So Ryan, just resonating with what you're saying there about like wasted potential. Sometimes that feeling of wasted potential can come out in a million different ways. And
Sure.
on one end, it's extremely unhealthy, and one end, it's extremely healthy. And so to me, ultra running is an expression of that. Like, why 100 miles? Like on some levels, it's because I think I can do it, and that feels crazy. But it's because that's also a statement expressing wasted potential. Like this, like if I just went and ran a 5K around the park, I understand why that's valuable to people. I'm trying to prove something that's inside of me that I haven't been able to prove on the outside.
Sure. Yeah. And that should be a huge, like, that hugely motivated me. And I hate, I just want to make it very clear here as we talk about this stuff that if I'm critical of myself or possibly you or anything really, I'm coming at it from it with a place of like no judgment.
Yeah.
Like I think you have to leave judgment behind when you talk about this stuff. And then also, I want to make it pretty clear that I understand I'm coming from a place of privilege. And that while I've had times in my life where I didn't feel very privileged, I still recognize that it could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
Right. So,
that's fair.
I think that's important just to kind of get out there that we're not just on here kind of like whining about stuff or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, like I heard someone say the other day, like the worst thing that's happened to somebody is the worst thing that's happened to somebody.
Sure.
And meaning maybe you've never had a loved one die before, and maybe someone else has lost all of their loved ones. Like that person who's lost all their loved ones might look down on the person who's never lost somebody. But that person who's never lost somebody, that's still the worst thing that's happened to them. So like we're still, I think I like what you're saying. Like we're keeping it in check. Like, hey, we're just talking about ultra running to some degree here. But it's also really important about ultra running. Yes, it has implications on the rest of our life.
Sure, it's very important. Anyway, okay, so the Army was great. Do you want me to kind of dive into like? I feel like I can kind of catch you up a little bit, and then we can kind of go back into like, okay, so this is what Special Forces selection is. This is what it looks like. I think it would
be cool to hear like what, since we're talking globally here about endurance on some levels, what did you have to endure in your training? Like I watched a video yesterday of Andy Stump, with the water polo team in like 2005, taking the United States water polo team through SEAL training. I mean, I can't wrap my mind around. So there's some stuff that they show us. I'm sure there's some stuff that they don't show us. What have you had to endure, even just in your military life, that helped you become stronger mentally?
Yeah. So I guess like there's a lot, and I don't want to get on here and tell war stories kind of
No,
thing.
you don't have. So no, I even mean like in your training, or anything that's important to you.
Right. Yeah. So I'll probably just I'll save those stories for like us personally when we're out in the desert suffering together.
That's something to look forward to.
But
Can you credential yourself? With how many tours you've done, just real quick? Like, hit us with the fast facts. You don't have to share details about missions, but like for this audience, I'd like them to hear like, who is this guy that spent a year in the military and like did boot camp, or what was it?
I appreciate that, Cody. I'm not gonna like do my ERB. Like,
we don't even know
which
what
is
that
like
means.
your enlisted.
I say okay, like
it's basically like this sheet that has all your awards, like all your stuff. I was in for 8 years. I was all of my active time. Sorry, what's that, Josh?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was in for 8 years total. All my active time was at 1st Special Forces Group. Like once I got out of the Q course, the qualification course, I was at Fort Lewis, Joint Base Lewis McChord, from 2008 to 2014.
Okay.
Yeah, and I have been to the Philippines, been to Afghanistan, Okinawa. I don't know where else I've been Oconus. I'm trying to think if I've been anywhere else Oconus. Yeah, I don't know. And then I'll leave it at that. That's
Okay.
kind of
So I'll just add that time in our U.S. history, and at least since I've been alive, we were in some of the most shit of our country ever, and you're in the front lines of one of our more specialized forces. So I think we can all just say that this guy has seen some stuff and been some places that we would never imagine, right? I'm gonna just lay that part out there, right? And then
Yeah.
Ryan, you can proceed, but that I just think that's
yeah,
worth noting.
yeah. I mean, yeah, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, so maybe we talk about just kind of focus on like selection a little bit here.
Yeah.
So there's been different iterations of special forces selection. Um, but the one I experienced was 3 weeks long, so 21 days. It basically consists of kind of like three different things. There's like the PT week, which in military speak, PT is like physical training. So like
Okay.
any kind of working out, right? And then there's land nav week, where you do land navigation, and then there's team week, where in the team you're on, generally like like 12 to maybe like 20 people depending, and then how many people quit and stuff like that. But you do like team stuff, like team kind of building stuff. But during PT week, it's kind of exactly what you see. You're in like a pit. They have like the big telephone poles where everybody's like lifting poles together, like like doing all this stuff. It's basically just designed to, they're just smoking you. Like you just get smoked all the time. Like people puke, I mean, like everybody's puking.
Yeah.
You do all this stuff. It's pretty crazy. And then like a couple hours later, you might be going on this run, and then maybe you have a ruck march. But the way it works is you have a number, and you're known by your number. So like I was number 14, like candidate 14. And
Okay.
they're like, yeah, I just remember that. And so when they talk to you, it's like, candidate, come here. And they'll tell you whatever, but all your instructions are posted on a whiteboard. So there'll be like, hey, assemble here in like PT gear, running shoes at like 1400 to await directions. And for example, you get there, and then they're just like, there's like cadre standing there, and they're like, candidates, you have a run of an undisclosed distance that must be completed in an undisclosed amount of time. Do not deviate from the course. The course is marked with cones. There will be water points along the way. Does anybody have any questions? And then they'll say, then it's like, you begin in 3 seconds. Good luck, candidates. 3, 2, 1, go. And you just go. You don't know how far your run's going to be. And that's kind of the gist of PT week. And you're sleeping, maybe 3-4 hours a night. If you get caught sleeping, all the cadre carry around like these yellow right in the reins. And sometimes they'll just stick their head in. And to this day, I don't even know like if they're actually writing stuff half the time. But sometimes they'll just ask you, they'll just be like, hey, candidate, come here. And you walk over there, and you're like standing there, yes, Sergeant. And they'll ask you a question or something. And they're like, you have no idea if they just like squiggled a bunch of stuff in their book. And then you answer it, and they're like, get the fuck out of here. You have no idea if they're just like fucking with you. But yeah, you're like, so I read War and Peace, the entirety of War and Peace during selection.
Really?
Because you can't sleep. Like if you got caught sleeping, you get dinged, right?
What an interesting choice of books to read then. I think that says something about you in terms of your intellect meets your sort of strength, your physical strength. Like, you kind of you were the full package. You were smart, and well, you are smart and you are strong. I think that's an interesting look into who you are.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I
I would have
appreciate that.
I would have gone Harry Potter, but it's fine.
Well, you could bring, I think you were allowed to bring one book. And so I was like, shit, I need a long
So
book.
book one.
Yeah, you know what I mean? I
Just
was
read
like,
it a
I
couple
don't want to
times.
Yeah.
run out of a, yeah, like, I don't know. I've
Oh,
never read
good
any Harry
point.
Potter books, but so
Good
it
point. So
wasn't
that
so
was
much that I
that's
was,
a long book. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I was like, okay, what haven't I read that's stupid long? I was like, okay, this meets it. Anyway, so yeah, so that's like basically PT week. You have these like unknown events throughout the day. You don't know what you're doing. You're like, they just tell you to do your best and you just do
Mm-hmm.
your best. And then land nav week is like you do these series of practice land nav courses. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then you eventually do like what's called the star course, which they call it a star course because when they give you when you get your first point and you go to one place and then there's like a point sitter who then gives you another like 8-digit
Mm.
coordinates.
Yeah.
And then you put that on your map. And so you basically
Hmm.
by the end, after you've gone to all your points, it looks like a star on your map. So they call it the star course. And it's like cross country through like kind of like North Carolina, like Pine Hills, like the
That's
sand
amazing.
trails, but also through, I mean, there's like a lot of swamps out there. So your feet
Mm-hmm.
are always wet
Oh
and
man.
you have like, usually it's like 40, I think it's like 45 or 50 pounds on your back without water. And they always have like these like fish scales. So they're always weighing you. Um,
Whoa.
yeah.
Whoa.
So it's like, if you come in underweight, they're always weighing you. And, yeah. And they usually don't kick you out. So you could literally be like, in your second day and they're
Mm-hmm.
already they might have already decided you're like, no, I don't know how it works, but point is you don't
Yeah.
know. Anyway,
Yeah.
so you do that, and those points, maybe anywhere from like 5-6 kilometers to maybe 12 kilometers apart. And you start out at night, so you start out like as the sun's going down. So
Mm-hmm.
your first couple points, you're doing just compass and map in the dark, no headlamps, of course. It's all tactical. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, and so your feet get absolutely shredded. And you got to remember, this is like you're only sleeping maybe 4 or 5 hours. Um, it's also cumulative. You're like, okay, so you have your PT week, and they're not always in the same order. So you might
Yeah.
get land nav first or
Oh,
whatever,
I see.
and then you go in, and I'm sure I'm leaving a bunch of stuff out, but then it's like you go into your team week, and it's basically like you do all these movements on these sand hill like tank trails, um,
Okay.
and on some hardball, but it's essentially they give you like these tasks, right? Like so you'll have to like there'll be like a bunch of like metal pipes with like three old like flat Jeep tires on wheels, and you'll have like an ammo crate or something that you have to like move from one point to another for like some indigenous fighters. So like you'll meet up
Hmm.
with like some indigenous like guerrilla forces or whatever,
Yeah.
and talk or whatever, and they're like, hey, we need you to. So it's you're kind of getting into this like role playing sort of thing, but then
Yeah.
you have to basically like do these crazy kind of feats
Hmm.
of building contraptions and doing teamwork, and then it's also incredibly physically demanding.
What would
Um,
you say? I mean, for a couple dummy civilians like Cody and me, like we hear this and we think, okay, we think we know what you're learning. You're learning teamwork and you're learning endurance. Like, what are you learning in this? Like, what do they want you to know? Like, what's the big picture of all this stuff?
you're learning like the very basics of like what it's going to be like to be on uh, an ODA kind of.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, like it proves physical fitness, and
Okay.
like physical fitness you're always going to need. Um, so kind of like whenever for like new guy advice for when you go to a team is like know your job really well and be as physically fit as possible, because you won't know all the stuff like all the minutia and nuances and ins and outs of like how to deploy on a team, how to interact with like indigenous forces on a team, like, but you can know your job and you can be physically fit. So that became a big thing where I was like those are the only two things you can really control. But anyway, so part of it's fitness, part of it's teamwork, part of it's learning how to suffer. Like you have to learn how to suffer so you have confidence when you're suffering.
So talk to me. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
That's what I'm dying. I'm dying to know what you know about that. And if you have some other stuff you want to say, please say it. If not, that's the statement. You got to know how to suffer. I mean, I'm learning I'm on the job learning, and I would love to just, get some hacks on this to learn what you know.
Yeah. So I think like let's see here. I have notes, so you just have to forgive me.
Yeah. Well, let me frame something, because
Yeah.
there's a population of this audience listening that's like me. I take care of myself, but I don't go run 100 miles. That's crazy. I was telling my daughters last night before bed, I was doing this podcast, and I was explaining you, Ryan and Josh, and what you're going to do in April. And they asked me, are they getting paid? Do they win lots of money? No, sweetie, they paid to do this. And they asked if that you guys had anything wrong with you. Like, what's wrong with these people? Why would they do that? Because you're right. It's like a logical, innocent child saying, why would you go run that far? So I just want to frame that I'm finding value in this podcast for a couple reasons. Life is tough. Parenting is tough. Marriage is tough. Work is tough. All of the things. And in life, right, we break through a barrier. It's not because I worked out or I have full strength. That's like gets us forward in longevity, right? And in running, I know it's critical, and in military, it's critical. But there's a piece of this conversation that's so interesting to me to listen to as a non-runner about the brain, because like Ryan has gone through. We were the same kind of person up to a point in our life, right? And then he's gone into this realm he's describing where he has endured things that I can't imagine, and his brain has gotten stronger, tougher, and he can live in that misery. Right? Yeah. It's like why I showered and prepped for this podcast, and he's riding a damn stationary bike having a great conversation. It's a very good example. But I'm so interested to hear, and I think it's valuable for everyone listening, runners or non-runners alike, is this like breaking through a barrier mentally and pushing yourself to a point to where you can be uncomfortable in whatever that uncomfort looks like. So I just want to mention that as a non 100-mile runner.
So that. And so to continue on with that, like, because I know the question is I kind of want to like just briefly tap this and then kind of feel like let people know kind of like what my kind of like endurance background is, and kind of the road that takes us to like right here where I'm like planning on stepping into like a 100-mile race. But so like just quickly, all those things, all those hardships from selection, and like even all this stuff through like basic training and everything else, it was just like I was so committed to like proving to myself, like I said I was going to do this thing and I was going to do it. You know what I mean? It was like if I was injured, like that's fine if I get injured and they like pull me out, but it was like I was going to be there on, day 21. And they were either going to tell me I was selected or I was a 21-day non-select, but I wasn't going to quit. And it was all those things I talked about earlier. It was like, I saw this as my chance to kind of like not recreate myself. It's hard to talk about this kind of stuff without kind of sounding silly and cliched, but it was like the person that I envisioned, like my vision of myself was this person. This type of person, not like necessarily like a special forces soldier.
Yeah.
But that was just the expression of it.
Yes.
It was like a person who was tough, a person who was like physically fit, mentally fit, that you could rely on, a person you could trust, a person who could, all these things that like how I saw myself in my brain, in my mind, like how you talk about, but that I didn't feel like I was expressing through my actions. And like without getting too much into the psycho side of it, I believe they call that cognitive dissonance, right? Where, and that's when, I don't know, I'm not super whatever, but like, then you're depressed and you're anxious and all these things because those things don't line up, right? And it makes it tough. So it's like that kind of drove me through all this. The idea, and there are tricks that I'll talk about that I kind of utilized to get through all this stuff. But deep down, it was, I am this person. My actions, like, have to, if I am this person, then, like, I have to express them. Like, I have to be them. And that was a way I felt I could do that. And it was a way that I felt it's like, nobody could ever take away those things. Like, those things are, like, tangible. You can't take away, like my Special Forces award. Like, you can't take away, like, you know what I mean? Like, they're proof. There's something tangible that I can hold in my hand and say, I did this.
Yeah.
I'm this person, you know, and
I have proof now.
Yeah. And I mean, like, that sounds very, like, externally motivated kind of thing, but it's really not. It's, like, important to me. If everybody I knew, at that point in time in my life had died, I would have still done the same thing. You know what I mean?
Meaning if there was no one there to be proud of you, you would have still been going.
Sure. But the fact that I knew I had support also, you know, that people were like, they wouldn't care if I didn't do it, but if I did it, they would be so proud of me.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so 2000, I do all the Army shit, right? And I can tell Army stories forever. And it's been like over a decade and much longer. So it's like, and I'm old. Like, we didn't say this, but we're clearly all the same. You know, I'm 41.
Yeah.
So I forget a lot of stuff. Anyway, so we get to the end of, like, what's going to probably be my, like, military career, so to speak. My wife wanted to have kids, or at least a kid. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being military family. But that's just not, she didn't want that. Cause, like, the lifestyle that you lead, that I led, was, it's like, you deploy for however long, 4 months, 6 months, 9 months, a year. You come back, you have, like, maybe a month or two of leave. Then, like, guys start going to schools. You start doing a bunch of stuff around the unit, you know. And then, like, within a few more months, like, you're already back out the door doing something else. So even when you're home, if you're at a school, like, on the East Coast, military school, you're on the East Coast and your family's here. So, you know, even if you're only deploying 6 months a year, right? Like, you're probably gone much more than that. Not just to mention the time you're at work when you're living at home. Especially if you're training up for stuff, you might be at night ranges, night shoot houses, just doing, like, cross country stuff, like land nav out in, like, the foothills of the mountains here, like around Fort Lewis. And so you might not be home. Anyway, so she wants to have family. I'm like, fine, that's fine. You know, like, I'm willing to, I'll step away from this and we can do that. And I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. But she's like, and I think you should go to law school. I'm like, okay, like, sure, like I'm like, I don't care, right? Like, I'm just like, whatever, man. Like, I'll do whatever. I don't care. And so I'm like, okay, that sounds good. And I knew I was gonna have, like, GI Bill, and so I wasn't gonna have law school debt, all that stuff. But I'm like, okay, I know enough about myself now that I'm like, I need, like, what do I do though? Like, I asked my wife, I'm like, what do I do though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I have to do something. And she's like, well, you should try triathlon. And I'm like, never really thought of it, honestly.
Should try what?
Yeah. What?
Wait, what did you say?
Triathlon.
Triathlon.
Oh, triathlon. Okay, nice. She's an insightful lady you got there.
Yeah, so she's like, you know, one of somebody we knew, like, one of her friends' husband had just, like, completed a triathlon, and I was deployed at the time, but like, I could see the end in sight. You know, it was like within a year. I knew I had to either re-enlist or my enlistment was up, so I knew, you know. And so I'm like, okay, I'm like, let's try it, right? And to back up a little bit, it's like when I joined the Army, I had never ran. Like we ran track in junior high. The longest thing I ran was a quarter mile. Like I was on the like the mile relay or whatever, and the quarter mile relay, and I ran the 200 because you could do like 3 running events.
Yeah.
When we were growing up, Cody and I would go to the gym during summer, and we would lift weights. And then when we got done, I would go do 4 laps around the track, while he would like stand there like really like perturbed, you know, because I'd just go like run like a 7, and it seemed like forever, man. I would go run 4 laps around the track. It would take like 6-7 minutes, right? Run like a 6:30, just run, right? And and it felt like I was out there for hours doing that. You know what I mean? And so like, but I just knew I was like supposed to do some kind of running. I don't know. Anyway, so that's kind of all the running I did. And so when I joined the Army, it's like you have to run. Like you have to do, at a minimum, you have to be able to run a 2 mile at a certain pace for your PT test. And so I'm like, okay, I wasn't really a runner, but as I went through the Q course, I realized I was like, if I'm really physically fit, like if I can ruck with a lot of weight and I can run and I'm like gym strong, like power clean, like all this stuff, I was like, I'll show up to my team and at least I'll be like a PT stud. Like, and so I was like, so I got more into running and more into like lifting weights and doing all this stuff. The weightlifting was much more interesting to me at the time because I was coming out from that like football, basketball background, and also is like, I enjoyed like, I don't know, like being jacked or whatever, right? Like from an aesthetic side point. And so like, but I learned to run, and around this time, I was like, okay, I'm going to like learn how to run properly. So I just got some Vibram 5 fingers and just started running. And I don't know if it's Vibram or Vibram. I don't know, but I
think Vibram. I don't know.
And I just started running, man. Learning how to like run differently. And a buddy of mine, who was from Alaska, he had an Alaskan Husky, and he was an ultra runner. This special forces guy that was an ultra runner, and he like taught me how to run, like like we'd run like go out on like a 10-mile run in the morning, and we'd do like 4 miles at like 9-minute pace, something like that, and then we do like tempo. We'd run like a few miles at like a 7-minute, and then we'd come back down. He was the first person I ever knew that had like a Garmin Forerunner, Anyway, so I'm like, cool, like I can do it. Triathlon makes sense. So we get out and like start doing triathlon. And at first it was like, I had no idea what I was doing, right? Like I'm sure most people are. You go, it's like, sit there, swim as hard as you can on the swim, but I was a terrible swimmer. So you're just like wasting tons of energy, like flailing about. Then biked as hard as I possibly could for 40K, and then go to run. And I think for the first triathlon I ever did, like I took a bunch of like no explode, like pre-workout before I did that. And so like I remember my legs just being so pumped on the bike that I could barely even like pedal. It was just so dumb. Anyway, but I was like, man, this is great. And one of my buddies that was on my team like started getting into it with me. But I was like, man, I can do this. I get it. I could do it. So I learned to swim. Like I really didn't know how to swim, but I went to the Y every morning. I got a book on how to swim, went to the Y every morning, started swimming, eventually joined a swim team, like a master's swim team, and did some swim meets and stuff.
Nice.
And yeah, I just started running. And then I can't remember if it was the first summer I did triathlon or the second summer. I think it was the second summer. I started like winning I was like 29, 30 at the time. And I like started like winning, right? I mean, there's local races, but like I was getting on the podium for age group. And I think I won overall, like I won an overall like local Olympic race, like.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I was like, hey man, like this is great. I can do this. like kind of like I was even toying around with ideas of like doing it kind of quote unquote professionally, like, just like register as an elite, like maybe have a couple, like not do it seriously, but maybe have a couple of sponsorship dollars on the side or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever. Well, so I have like a history of like some pretty serious like chronic injuries, right? And so in the summer of 14, I'm doing a now defunct race called Chelan Man, and it's like a half iron length race out in Chelan, which is in Eastern Washington, with tons of elevation. It's an amazing course, but I knew I had issues. So I have in my hips, I have what's called FAI, which is femoral acetabular impingement. It basically just means your hips and the ball and sockets are all messed up, like for lack of a better term. And so I'm like, okay, so I'm about 9 miles into the run on the way home, and I just can't like walk anymore. Or I can't run anymore. I'm like, and I can't even walk. And so that's my one and only DNF, DNF my entire life.
Now we're talking.
Yeah, now our Venn diagrams are starting to
we're
starting
some
to come together, right?
Chelan Man.
So I'm like into that, and I'm like, and that's so I end up I get to an aid station like 9 miles in, only like 4 miles, but I can't even walk. So I'm just like I'm like I got in the back of a pickup truck. They took me to the start line, and it's around a lake. It's around Lake Chelan, and my friends were on their wakeboarding boat, like my wife, like all my friends, and they're like, I'm running by the lake, and they're like, they had like music blaring for me, and like I get to that aid station, and I'm like, I'm done. They're like, okay, we'll go pick you up. Anyway, so that left like a really kind of sour taste in my mouth, and I started law school that September, and over that Christmas break, I had my left hip reconstructed. Like I had to have left hip reconstruction. Yeah, so I had to have that hip redone. I need to get the right one redone, but that's a different point. And anyway,
maybe after this race, right?
probably.
Who knows?
Hopefully, right? Hopefully I'll break it enough that I gotta do it. But anyway, so got the hip surgery on the left hip, and kind of just was like, this is kind of it. Like I just kind of like resigned myself. I was like, I'm not gonna be an active person anymore. I was like, I kind of felt like my life was over. Like honestly, I just didn't see myself being able to come back from that kind of hip thing, because I tried and it was just bad. I couldn't deal with it. So from basically Christmas 2014 to Christmas 2018, I didn't do much of anything. I got up to 255 pounds. So I gained a ton of weight. I was in law school, horrible physical health, really bad mental health. And then 2018, like my wife got me like a new Garmin watch for Christmas, a not so subtle hint, I think. And we were in Pittsburgh, and on Christmas Day 2018, I'm pretty sure it was 18, might have been 17, but I'm pretty sure it was 18. Went out for a 5-mile run. That was the first time I'd ran in a long time, since Chelan Man actually. And I was like, okay, I'm doing this. Like I'm back. I'm making this part of my life again. So that kind of motivated me to go again. And, I've had like ruptured discs on my left side, ruptured discs on my right side. I have left hip reconstruction. My right hip needs to be done. And, but I kind of assembled a team. So I started really like kind of digging into the knowledge, trying to learn a lot about physical and mental health. And so, I met a physical therapist here. His name's Dan Benson. He owns Forefront Physical Therapy. He's amazing. He works with athletes, and I've been working with him since 18. and not all the time, but off and on. And he helps me kind of keep things in track. I really, it's kind of silly as it is, like Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, you know, like Jeff Cavalier. Like I just kind of like started getting back into this like mindset of like trying to glean knowledge and information, very similar to like what you're doing right now. I took some coaching courses
nice.
that were like for long distance triathlon and nutrition coaching, like that sort of stuff. And then like that's where I'm at, right? I'm married, have the kid. He's 15 months now. I'm very fortunate. I don't have to work, so I haven't. I don't have a like. And we'll talk about that a little bit, Cody, but you know, it's like, I don't have, you know, I'm free. I take care of my kid, and that's pretty much all I need to do. So, so that's.
So then, all right, now let's move into the 100-miler. So you and I kind of reunite, and I can't remember. Did I just say, "Hey, do you want to do this with me?" Or did you say, "Hey, I'm thinking about it"?
So yeah, a little of both. So I saw you do the race with Eric.
Oh yeah.
I saw you do the race with Eric, and I was like, and we had chatted a little bit about Borderlands and stuff whenever Cody first reached back out to me. And so like I knew that I was like, man, Josh is into the same things I'm into. And I was kind of looking for an opportunity to like, I don't know, reconnect with you in some way on that level. But that was the kid was like, I think he was like a couple months old, you know, like, so I was like, you know, playing it by like, just whatever. Right. And then you said you were going to do another, and I was like, I go to a running group here called the Columbia City Running Group. And there's a lot of people in there who run ultras. And, so one of the guys,
it's a super iconic trail running city. Seattle is houses currently some of the icons of trail running.
Yeah. And we can get to that too, how awesome it is to live here, but it's like, you know, but anyway, so I was like thinking I wanted to do, I think there's the Cascade Ultra series.
Yeah.
I was actually running around Lake Washington with one of the guys in the running group, and a lady runs up beside us, and she's actually the organizer for the Cascade Ultra running series, and in which the guy I was running with had done. And so we were chatting with her, and she was actually in the process of doing 4 marathons in 4 days. It like culminates with the Seattle Marathon.
Nice.
But yeah, so I think that's over like Thanksgiving. So you do one that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then culminates with the Seattle Marathon. Anyway, so I was like, yeah, I want to do an ultra. Let's do an ultra. And so then I texted you. I didn't realize it was a 100-mile event. I'm not going to lie. And you're like, I thought it was maybe like another 50-miler, which to be perfectly honest is much more manageable.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it is. That's the point though, right?
Right. So, and then I'm like, okay, I want to and then like, you know, now it's become this thing that I'm like, I don't know. It's like, now it's like, I have to do it. You know, it's like, it's like, it's just this, it's out in front of me, and it's like, I really want to do it. Like, I really want to like, not to, I don't know if this puts pressure or anything else, and it's not intended to, but it's like, I want to see you, I want to do it myself, but I want to be,
pressure's on.
I want to see you do it, man.
Yeah.
Like,
dude,
and even if I can't do it, I can't do it, like, I won't go. Like, I'll be at the finish line. Like, I might come back out on the course if I could like, if I can recover a little bit and come back on the course later and run, like I would. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really want to.
Thank you.
To see you be able to do this, and so I think that, I'm sorry I rambled a bunch and I talked forever, and I don't know if any of that is important or you should cut it all. I have no idea.
It'll be like a 6-minute podcast.
Yeah, just cut it all.
No, but here's let's get into this moment here. This is my moment where I struggle. But let's say we've stayed together. There's no promise. I want to do an episode with me, you, my friend Alex, he's a evolutionary biologist. I'm interviewing him next week. He's got a really great story. And then my friend Jeremy. It'll be the four of us at the starting line together. And Alex is a C-17 pilot for the Air Force. Jeremy's former Navy, and your former Army Special Forces. So I'm surrounding myself with a good group of dudes at the starting line.
Sure.
Who knows if we'll stay together, because there's a lot that goes on, and we're gonna yo-yo, and maybe we'll never see each other again at the first mile. Let's get into the scenario where we happen to be side by side, because this is a fall apart point for me. We start at, I think, 6 a.m. I'm so strong through the first two marathons, meaning I'll hang in there. There's no doubts enter my mind in those first two marathons. But let's say it's about 3 a.m. I'm really over it around 2. I mean, like at 1:30 a.m. I'm like, this is awesome. I'm still going. And then at 2 o'clock, it's just like, oh God, sunrise is in 4 hours. And I start, and the wheels just start to fall off, and the dread comes over me. And if you're standing with me, what are you telling me in these moments?
Well, so, I mean, I think it depends. Like, do you want to hear anything? I mean, we've already kind of talked about that, right? As far as like...
That's a really smart first question. I think I need to hear whatever you would tell me then. I need to hear it now so I can put it in my tool belt.
Sure. So like, let's change it then. Let's just leave then for then, and let's keep now is now. And let's just not pretend like we're in the middle of the race. Okay. So my tips is, one, you have to like believe that you are a tough, like hardcore, like person. Like that's just the first thing you have to believe. And that doesn't mean that you can't be compassionate or empathetic or that you have to be cocky or anything else. But like deep down in your like heart, soul, whatever, you have to be like, I'm a tough motherfucker. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I don't know, like stupid.
Yeah.
It's stupid, right? But you're like,
it's not. No, I hear you.
I'll fight a bear for my
this is a
family.
missing link.
Like, I'll fight a bear for my family. I'll wrestle a fucking mountain lion for my, like, I'll step in front of a, like, whatever, man. Like,
yeah,
think of, like, I don't know how to, it's stupid. And it's kind of whatever, but you have to believe you're a tough person, first and foremost. And then, like, let's see here.
Ryan, is that because the seed of doubt is such a demon that grows in a cancer in your mind that it will just get out of control so fast that you have to have that confidence to push against that just glimmer of, oh fuck, I'm about to die. I'm about to stop. I gotta stop.
Well, number one, you have to know that like your brain is like probably bullshitting you. Like you're not gonna die.
This is so new to me. You're like, now I'm hearing this from so many places now, and I'm like, this is my 9th attempt. How have I never heard this? I've been on the other end that my brain is my, I'm going to rely on it. And you're saying it's a liar.
Well, like the thing that I'm telling you,
and so
is,
many
like,
people are.
You have to like treat your brain. I don't know. Maybe this is why I'm not, I don't know, man. Maybe this is like me, and nobody should ever. That's also the disclaimer. Like nothing I say on here should be construed as like advice for anybody to do it in any way ever.
Yeah, but that's why you're on here, because I want the unique Ryan take on how Ryan does this.
So in one part of, there's always two voices. Like to me, there's always two voices. There's the voice telling me how bad everything is, how shit everything is, how everything sucks. And then there's the other voice, and like cognitive behavioral therapy could potentially help with this, because you have your like belief statements, and then you write belief statements down, right? And I'm probably fucking this up too, but you basically write belief statements down, and then like, I don't know, like I can't finish this race because, and those are not generally, and I don't want to discount any emotion or whatever, because you're feeling it, so it's real. So when I say it's not real, it's not that it's not real, you're experiencing it. It might be that you're fabricating the situation, right? So
yes, to give myself an excuse to quit.
Yeah, so it's like, so for example, for somebody that is doing like cognitive behavioral therapy for like PTSD or something, your belief statement might be, if I go to this thing, like something bad, like whatever bad thing is going to happen. And then you kind of evaluate that statement, right? Like, is that true? Like, is that objectively, like, sure, possibly, but then, and so you begin to change the way you think. So anyway, so part of it is just kind of that is playing that game. But, so like when you're like, oh shit, this hurts so bad, I can't do this, I'm miserable. Like the other part of you has to be like, this is the kind of thing, it's like, if this wasn't hard, if I wasn't feeling this, would I be doing it?
Right.
Like it has to justify you, right? So like, I think you have to use it as like not a reward, but it's, you know, it's like, okay, I'm suffering right now, but I'm such a badass. I'm suffering. Like, and you kind of like, don't give yourself a way out.
Can I pause you there? Because this is really good. For me in that moment, I'm not saying I'm suffering because I'm a badass. I'm saying I'm suffering because I'm weak. Do you know what I mean? And so my mind is on the other end of that spectrum. It's not like, oh, I'm so tough, I'm suffering. It's like, no, someone who's tough wouldn't be suffering. That's what I'm telling myself.
Somebody who's tough is going to be suffering their balls off, but they're going to be like, fuck it. I go. I keep going.
That's right. That's what I'm hearing. Yeah.
Like tough people, it's not like they don't feel pain. You know? And so when you're suffering, you have to let that validate you. You have to make that.
That's brilliant.
And like part of it is, so here's like an easy way to like kind of to think about it. It's like I used to ride whenever I was still going to school and driving, like going around a lot, I rode my bike everywhere, like my like pedal bike. Yeah. And, you know, it'd be like 32 degrees in Seattle rain in like January or whatever. And I'm riding to school and it's like, it sucks, man. Yeah. But it's like, I'm a human. I'm not meant to live in this environmentally controlled box my whole life. Yeah. Like I'm doing something that like, it makes me feel like, it's not like a superiority complex. I don't mean to sound like that, but it's just like, I'm like, okay, this is the way it's supposed to be kind of thing. Right. Like,
why am I surprised by this? This is how it's supposed to be.
Right. Like pain is just pain. It's just a thing, just like anything else. Right. It doesn't have to mean anything. Kind of like, you know, I don't know.
So looking on that pain without judgment on some level too. Right. It's just pain. Just is what it is.
Yeah. You have to accept it. Like you have to just be like, okay, this is what I do and this is the result. And if I do this thing, then this happens. Like, so what?
Ryan, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you think it's from, and Josh, you too, I mean, do you think it's from the experience of tough things that you've learned these comments that you're making, you know, over a period of time and with more difficult things and just continually exposing yourself to things that we're discussing and some you can't even talk about in your military background? Josh, right? I think look at you, like enduring these races and failing and trying again and getting better each time, or, you know, is that the answer, is to put yourself out there and do it? Like for basic people with cold plunges, just get in it, right? Do it and endure it and realize that you're going to live and just realize, like, work through it mentally and then keep doing that thing that makes you uncomfortable, or riding the bike in the temperature. Is it easy? Is it easy as that, Ryan?
I mean, some of that is it. And like, that's, I mean, you can argue like the validity of some of these like techniques or whatever, but like part of like military training is you practice suffering. That way, when you do it, when it's life and death, it's something you're used to. You've done it before. It's not scary. You know, you've gotten through it. It kind of makes you feel like it gives you a sense of control in a very out of control situation. Right? Because you're confident. It's confidence.
Okay. That's another banner thing. I should be taking notes, but another banner thing. How did you just say it? It gives you some sense of control in a situation that's out of control.
Right. Like I'm not scared. Like I'm not scared of like if I'm in combat, I'm not scared of like my reactions to it necessarily. Like I'm wholly confident in what I can do. Like my ability, like whether it's athleticism, training, like your mental ability, all the muscle memory training you have, all those things build confidence. And like if you've experienced pain in your, like, you know, if you've only been sleeping 3-4 hours a night for weeks on end in training, and like, you know, temperature that's freezing at night, slightly above freezing in the day, it's raining, you know, like you haven't eaten in like 3 days, like all this shit, right? And it's like it's miserable, but then it's like when you see it in real life, you're like, whatever, man, I do this. This is what I do. It's my time. You know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Like it's like, it's my time to go now. Like prepare to get shit on kind of thing, right? Like I'm like, let's go.
That's not dissimilar. That's not dissimilar from all the people you've interviewed that express how, when you ask them the question, Josh, of how, give me tools to how to endure when my mind shuts down. That's not dissimilar in the responses that you've been given.
Yeah.
Well, and so I haven't really given you any tools, right? I haven't told you how to do that, unfortunately.
Right.
So I do. And like,
I'm hearing insight. Let's hear tools. Yeah, you got tools.
So like, so, yeah. So, I mean, we talked, I think, you know, we texted about this a little bit, like the stacking the victories, which is like a term
I just want to give, because that one was so good to me, because like Jesse and even Matt Johnson, who was another former military, he was National Guard in Iowa. He was talking about, like take the next step. And I think, or, you know, just be present in this mile. You're in this mile, be here. But what you're saying is be present in this mile. And then when you get past that mile, you were saying like stack that as a victory.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
It's a confidence builder, right? So it's like, you can't be like, and like, so I've never done a 100-mile race. I haven't. I've never done a 50-mile race. I mean, I've done half Ironman. You know what I mean? So I've done like stuff that's gone on into the 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hour kind of realm. Anyway, but when you start those races, you're not like, well, here we go, let's run 100 miles. Like whenever I'm jumping, I'm like thinking in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to do X, Y, and Z before this swim leg starts. You know, and I'm like getting myself, and then I'm like, I'm swimming. Okay, I'm swimming, and I'm thinking technique. Like I'm always cueing myself technique. And then we're through transition, and then I'm on the bike, and I'm always just like, I'm working, like I'm like, okay, what's our power like? What's our heart rate like? How we feeling? Oh, my alarm's going off. I need to take a drink of water. Time for a gel. Like all these things, right? And so you're not thinking about that exact end thing, right? You're thinking about all these little things. And, you know, I think, I'm not sure on the day of the race necessarily, but it's like, you think about all or maybe so, but you think like, you stack those victories. It's like, okay, I'm out of the water. You know, I did that part. Now onto this part. Yeah. And it's like, they build confidence. Like one builds, it's like momentum in sports, right?
Yeah.
And I think I heard that stacking victories thing, like an NFL player, like did an interview or something and was like, you know, we're stacking victories now. And I was like, oh, I've never called it that, but like, it makes sense. It's like you build momentum, and the same concept goes. You get, each time you're like, you know, you take a step forward. Yeah. And then I think it's also important to like, so I'm just going to kind of stream of thought these things, because these are things that kind of like help me. But it's like, so whenever I was going through selection or any of those hard things, like whenever I'd be very distraught, it's like, I'm not only am I thinking about what I'm doing, but I think about the things that I've accomplished to get here. So in our situation, that's going to be training. That's going to be however many miles you've already put there. Like how many people, you're like on mile 78, how many people have ever ran 78 miles?
I mean, in my world, what's hard is that there's a lot. So sometimes that weighs on me, but I hear what you're saying.
But you have to, you know, but you run your own race, right? Like, I know you've heard that.
Yeah.
And
totally,
it's cliche, But it's like, so you think about that. You think about the challenge. Like, think about like how proud you are of yourself, like for doing the
Yeah.
things. Like, get emotional. Get emotional. Let your emotions, the positive ones, let them drive you. Like, think of how proud like friends and family are. Think of,
Yeah.
I don't know, like you're alive. You're fucking alive.
Yeah.
You're doing something that makes you feel alive. You're experiencing the highs, the
Yeah.
lows, all these things. Along with that, think how privileged you are. Like,
Yeah.
think of the privilege you have to be able to go out and do something you love and something that makes you who you are, because there are a lot of people out there that for various reasons will never be able to do the thing that makes them them.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so it's like they don't have time, they don't have they either have a physical, some kind of disablement, there's all
Yeah.
these things, the money, the situation.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
that person might have really poor like mental and physical health, not because they want to, but because they
Right.
just don't have the opportunity to express part of themselves that makes them who they are. So there's a
Fascinating.
privilege to that, right?
Yeah.
Um, like, that opportunity is so precious. You may never get that opportunity again.
Yeah.
Um, like, you can like think like setting an example for your kids. Like, there's all these, like, all those things are just what like come to me, but they can be anything to you. And
Yeah.
it's just, yeah. So I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if any of that makes sense or.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Okay, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you one more, and if Cody has one more, we'll do these two last questions. But is there a certain moment, and it can be in any context, and you divulge details as you see fit, if it happens to be something related to military service. But is there anything that in a moment that you can recall that you're there and you want to quit, and you're convinced in your mind that you are going to quit, and then you don't, and you
Yeah,
keep going?
yeah. Like every few minutes, and I'll tell you, like, so an easy one would be like during the land nav events,
Uh-huh.
during selection. You have a lot of weight on your back. You're walking a lot. Your feet are completely like I basically had just wrapped my feet in duct tape, because there was no skin on the bottom anymore. It
Gosh.
didn't matter. You know what I mean? It was just the
Yeah.
only way I could put some barrier in between raw skin and because the moleskin would just come off. It's too wet. You know.
Wow.
Yeah, and so you're walking across the North Carolina woods, and you have two options. You can go to your next point, and you could quit there, I guess, or you can go out to a dirt road, and you just sit on the dirt road and wait for a truck to come by and get you. Like
Wow.
eventually, cadre will drive by on one of those, like, and then you just wait there and you just sit there, like, and you see people. You're walking along doing your land nav stuff in the day, and there are people just out chilling on the side of the road, eating their food. Like, they don't have to worry about rationing anymore because they're done. So they're eating like a
Wow.
couple MREs sitting out in front of them. You're like, I can't eat mine. I only have one left today. Like, whatever, right? And they're just quitting. And so those are your options. And so I'd be like, well,
Wow.
I'm not doing that. So
Wow.
I'm just going to walk to the point, and if I still feel like quitting, it's like there's been people that have talked about this too. It's like, I'm going to go to that thing, and then if I still want to quit, I want to quit. And inevitably you get there. And so in that situation, treat it like an aid station. There's like a point, there's like this
Yeah.
old like Vietnam vet sitting there, like gives you your point. There's other people coming in, people marking their stuff on their map, eating some food. Maybe you see somebody you're not supposed to talk to each other. So you're kind of like, hey, what's up? And so you're like, okay, they're still going, man. They're going, let's go. I'll see them tonight. You're like, let's go.
Wow.
I can keep doing this. I'm stepping out again.
Wow.
And you step out again.
Dude, that's crazy
Um,
how similar that is to a 100 miler. I mean, one is more real life and the other one is this hobby effort. that I'm doing, but that is so it. Like when you're climbing up Smith Mesa on the road in the Zion Desert, there is so much carnage. I've passed like 6 or 7 people last time I tried this, just all vomiting there, and then you get to the top and everyone's DNFing and there's carnage, but then there's like 3 or 4 people who are like getting up, putting their pack back on, or choosing to never sit down so they don't have that temptation, and you're walking out of there. That's really interesting to how similar that sounded.
So there was one thing that has nothing to do with me at all necessarily that I wanted to talk to you about you before and then
Yeah.
Cody, if we don't get to any, like, if we're running out of time, like, we can just chat, man, talk about some stuff after this. But like, so check this out. My take for you is like, I hear you throughout this, the theme that I hear throughout this entire thing is that you get this guilt and despair that builds into you. And I think nutrition will help with that a little bit. But first of all, let's work through that a little bit. Okay. So first of all, this kind of idea of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs is kind of bullshit, right? Like, I don't believe that running is like self-actualization for you.
No, I always think it's at the bottom.
Yes.
I think it's the bottom.
Running, now, are you going to die without it? No, but your quality of life is really going to suffer. And I think so many people have mental health issues and physical health issues because they can't get whatever it is they need to get, right? So number one, it is you, and it's not something to feel guilty about. You know what I mean? And it's not something that's stupid or silly. It's like, it provides you with mental and physical health. It's a part of who you are, and you shouldn't feel guilty over it. And it's like, maybe you could express that part of you some other way and whatever, but it's you. It's not going to Vegas and gambling away like 10 grand or sports gambling or whatever, but it's part of you. And then, so I don't think you should discount it, man. You kind of talk about it like, oh, it's just trail running. Oh, it's not life or death. Yeah. Man, it's serious. It's important to you. It makes you who you are. At least that's what I think. And then the other thing is, and this, like I said, I don't want to sound like judgmental or anything, but like, does Mrs. Rosenthal prefer Rebecca these days, or?
You know what's funny is that someone called her Rebecca the other day. I was like, and I got mad and defensive. Like, Becky, they don't even know you. It's Becky. She's like, I signed my emails Rebecca now. I was like, we've been married 20 years. Well, heads up if you go by a different name. She does go by Rosenthal, so she's Becky Rosenthal, not Becky Burns.
So anyway, I would say like, if Becky tells you, if she says, hey Josh, like this is like, let me do this for you. Like I'll handle this. Like allow her to like love and support you as she will. Like don't, like basically what you're doing is she's saying, hey Josh, I'm fine. And you're basically telling her that you know her better than she does and she's not fine. You know, like taking care, like while you're on the course, you're basically saying, hey, I know you better than you know you. And so I'm going to protect you from yourself. Like I have to be there to assist you. You know, you can't just be there all by yourself. And even though I know you're strong, it's kind of like saying she's not strong enough. She doesn't know herself. So, and I don't want that to sound judgmental, but like, if you think about it like that, if you think like she's trying to show, like she's trying to express her love for you, right? Like in a manifestation, and like thinking you know what's best for her is like kind of a fucked up mentality, right? And so I think if you let that go, and then kind of reciprocate that, right? Like your racing is kind of like an expression, like think of racing as like an expression of love for them. Like, you know, and then I don't know, man. The other thing is too, if you do truly feel guilty about it, like build up that like a emotional bank account, so to speak. So like make, you know, positive sentiment override, like make all the other times that you're not out on the trail or racing or doing whatever, make it so good. So where it's like, you know, you kind of earn, you've put in the work and you earn your thing. So I think it's two things. One, just try to make everything better so you don't feel guilty of it. Because I think if you're like, oh, I did this and I did that and now I'm out on this run. then you start to feel guilty.
Yes.
But then at the same time, so I think make sure everything's awesome as we can do. I mean, we all struggle. We're all getting better, whatever, as parents and as husbands. Anyway, so yeah, and then don't try to protect her from herself. It's kind of a sexist sort of way to think, man.
That's really good. And let me tell you where some of that guilt creeps in. It's because this is my favorite. I'm in the midst of doing my favorite thing that I could possibly imagine. And that's where I start to feel guilty when I get the things that I want. You know what I mean?
Sure.
And so that's the hard part, to be like, that I have to fight against. And really, that guilt is really an expression of how much I love being out there.
Yeah, I get it.
That's insightful.
I understand.
Cody, do you have any last questions before we call it?
Yeah, I know. I try to figure out how to word it, so let me just throw it out there. What I don't want out of all of this for you, as I look at you and love both of you guys, I don't want, if you fail, not to put it out there that you're going to, but if you fail, for me, it's 100-mile. What if it was 102 and you could make the 100, but you couldn't make the 2? Would you be a failure? No. So what if you make 75 and you don't make the 100? Are you a failure? Like, in this context of this conversation, we could be talking about being husbands and fathers, and there's an absolute line there where failure is not an option. Yeah. But in the context of the mental health aspect of what you both have put in your life to have strong minds and to carry forward, and Ryan, your situation may be very different from Josh's, but I think they're both on the same pace of you're both looking for something to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Whether that's business or it's running or whatever it is at this point in time in each of your lives, I think has been different, and it will be different in the next 10 years. But I wonder if I frame this as a question, Ryan, failure in a war situation isn't an option. It's life or death. How do you wrestle with failure like you did in that race you were describing? Or if you don't make it 100 miles in April, heaven forbid, how do you wrestle with what is really important versus what is a goal? And then I'm going to learn from that goal and get better next time. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think you have to it's such a tough line to walk for me. I never go into quitting really isn't an option, but at the same time, I'll say this and I probably won't be able to do it or whatever, but I would prefer to do the whole, I'll walk it in if I can't run. And the only way I'm not going to finish is if I get pulled off the course, or if I can't walk, or if it's but at the same time, I think it's incredibly important not to look at yourself without judgment, right? You have to be your biggest cheerleader. You can't be your worst enemy, or you're never going to accomplish anything, because you'll always be getting in your way. Yes. So I would always say this, there is no failure. I don't think of things as failure, a success or failure. That's just not how I look at the world. So maybe that's just a different worldview that, there's something there. Nothing's a failure, I guess.
Yeah. Maybe it's oversimplified to think about it that way. Everything's it would be so conversational. I do feel though, Cody, to your question, there was a guy I had on the podcast, goes by Bear, and Bear talked about when he coaches people in nutrition, when it comes to snack time, if the junk food isn't in your pantry, then you're not going to eat the junk food. So actually good nutrition starts at the grocery store. So make sure you're not putting those groceries in the pantry. And we equated that then to the idea of quitting and this idea of failure. So for me, this is the first time that I'm not picking up the option of quitting at the grocery store and putting it in my pantry, if that makes sense. So what Ryan talks about of, I have this mentality where I'm not going to quit. I'm willing to walk it in. And you hear that on the podcast a lot. Jeremy, just about everybody's that way. I have never been that way. Mine has always been, well, if I need to quit it, I just quit. This is the first time I'm trying to not put that in the pantry as an option. Mm-hmm. And then I think of another thing that Andrew Glaze said, that your body, we talked about earlier, your body's a liar. if the pain that's in your ankles is going to move its way up to your hips, and then it's going to be in the center of your back, and then it's going to be your head, and then it's going to go back to your ankles. Your brain's just trying to get your body to quit. So I'm looking at all these things and thinking, okay, I'm resonating with all of them. I've experienced them all firsthand. And for me, this time, it's the first time that quit's not that I'm not putting quit in the pantry. That is not a way out. Becky doesn't want that because I'm miserable. I'm miserable after these DNFs. She doesn't want that for me. She's always trying to keep me in the race. She's trying to speak, logically to me in the race when my brain is unable to think logically. But to your question of failure, working through it, thinking through it, it's I'm not thinking of it in failure or success as much as I'm thinking I'm not going to quit. That's not an option. Unless it's rhabdo, which I had a touch of rhabdo. That's you don't want to mess with certain things.
No.
But I think I'm wise enough now. I know my body well enough to be able to differentiate between something like kidney problems and something like back pain, where I get my back pain in my upper middle back.
Yeah.
So
fast questions are: if I start running, do I have to grow a beard? Second question is: why is Ryan on the damn bike?
So, Josh, and feel free. I feel whatever, man. So I got about 60 miles in December running, and then I got about 2 weeks into a week into January and realized my right calf was completely fucked. And so I basically didn't run for all of January. February, so I've been doing very low volume. So right now, the only real way I have to keep my cardiovascular fitness up is riding a bike. So basically my day looks like this. I wake up around 4:30. I do about 30 to 45 minutes of mobility, stretching, physical therapy type stuff. I get on the bike for an hour to 2 hours. Later on in the afternoon, I spend about an hour to an hour and a half doing more mobility, physical therapy stuff. And then again in the evening, about 30 minutes of myofascial, stretchy kind of stuff. And
nice.
The thing is I'm going to really test this low volume, approach. Cause I can't run more than about a mile right now without my calf just completely locking up on me.
Really?
Yeah. So, but I'm going to be there 100%.
Well, yeah, I think Cody, you got to have a beard kind of because
I'm out.
There's a primal, as a man, I feel like Jeremy. So of all the people at the starting line that my buddies, so Ryan, Jeremy, Alex,
All beards.
I'm hoping has a big mustache because he's still I think he's still active duty Air Force and he works for the Department of Defense. So he has to have some stuff nice, clean shaven here.
Sure.
Jeremy's beard is quite unruly, much like Ryan's, and then mine is on its way. And I just think that you got to have a beard.
Okay.
And what was your first question? So if you run, you have a beard. And what was the other one?
Oh, he answered it while he's on the bike. I understand that.
Yeah. I mean, here's the deal. My resting heart rate now is in the high 40s.
Good.
Because of if I'm running no less than 2 hours a day right now.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Yeah, and I'm feeling a little burnout, but I imagine the finish line and it wakes me up. There just becomes this point once you hit a certain point in fitness, and far be it from me, I'm not a coach. I'm the furthest thing from a coach or a nutritionist or someone who understands much about the human body. You get to this point where if you're not getting your heart rate up, you are a miserable son of a bitch. And so you just gotta, if your heart is in that good a shape, you gotta work it. Just like a dog. It's just like a dog that gets restless, that's in good shape. The dog's got to go to the park.
Days off are the most miserable experience in my life.
I hate my 1 day off a week that I'm trying not to run. It's miserable.
I mean, you need it.
Absolutely.
We
Makes
need
you
it,
stronger, but it's just mentally, it's just like, oh, I mean, like even now, like the feeling I'm starting to get at the thought of like putting on my running clothes, it's just like, oh,
at
it
40,
feels so good.
at 40, it's like, I feel like, especially with the amount of history you have, it's like, I feel like training, taking some of those hours you would be running and working on your mid back strength and working on like hip flexor strength,
Yes.
glute strength, like things that work in opposition to your mid back and things that work in opposition also to your hip flexors. Because like, let's think. So for elite athletes, them getting that extra 30 minutes of work a day is giving them marginal gains.
Yeah.
For guys like us, an extra, let's say you're running a 10-minute pace, which we probably are doing something like that when we're training like this. So getting an extra 3 miles a day versus like 30 minutes of like some kind of focused corrective exercise, and tell me what's going to get you through mile 70 to mile 100. The extra 3 miles a day or
Right.
being stronger
Exactly
through all
right.
your stuff.
Exactly right.
Because like you
Yeah,
have
that's
to
a
be
good
really
point.
healthy to be able like to be privileged enough to like chase marginal gains. If you're not super
Yeah.
healthy, you have other tasks, and marginal gains are not one of them.
Yeah. And so then that 30 minutes of strength 2 to 3 times a week is like exponential gains in your performance.
Right. Yeah. Changes everything.
Well, we should do
Anyway.
this again when we're 60.
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't wait.
Great. This is
Can't wait for April, man.
Yeah. Cody, my buddy, Dan has an airplane in St. George with your name on it. He said he'd fly you to the starting line. Okay. That's it. We did it. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man.
Okay.
Bye.